analysis, a study done as per statistical requirements, 30 subjects, following 3 periods of sessions, doing nothing, sitting quietly, meditating, and doing cleaning. And the results were remarkable. We could clearly demonstrate a reduction in heart rate soon as you started to meditate, and it kept on going down even during cleaning. Similarly, there is this parameter, whether you know, heart rate variability. It is one of the most researched parameters in spiritual practices, or the papers which are published with meditation usually will have heart rate variability as a measure, because this is something which is a measure of autonomic nervous system, the nervous system which is not in our conscious control. It is autonomic, so to say. So HRV was also measured, and we could clearly demonstrate that when you meditate, your switch occurs from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system, most of us are aware. If you want to revise our biology classes, after class 9, I think, we don't read biology, and you're in mathematics stream. So sympathetic nervous system is supposed to be the fight or flight system. It is an alert mode, emergency mode provided to us. When that becomes active, we are supposed to have a very good eyesight. We can see clearly to far off distances. And the blood supply is directed. So body has a remarkable system of using the fixed amount of blood to directing it to wherever it is required the most. So when sympathetic nervous system is active, the blood supply is directed to your limbs and not to your frontal part of the brain, because that is the executive brain, or logical, reasoning, systematic kind of brain. Executive brain, we call it. So the blood supply, you don't need to think rationally at that time. You just need to run away from danger. So this is the fear or fight or flight system. Suppose you are in a jungle and there is a tiger in front of you. So what you have to do is either run away or climb a tree. So this system is devised in such a way that the blood supply from intestines, from frontal part of the brain, all is taken away and it is directed to your limbs. Similarly, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, and you are ready to run. Unfortunately, most of the cardiac disorders and other stress-related disorders are because we've now understood that we are mostly in this stress mode. We are always in a fearful mode, always in this kind of mode which is not good for the body. This was to be used only as and when required, but we are perpetually in this mode. So when we meditated, it was clearly demonstrated through HRV parameters that we switch over to the parasympathetic mode, which is the rest and relax mode. What you feel after a session of meditation, after listening to some chants or listening to some wonderful music, you are into the parasympathetic mode. There is no danger. And that is the state which is supposed to be best for learning, best for creativity. So that is what our students should be most of the time. Well, if you remember our school days, our mindset used to be something full of fear, full of apprehension, fear of failure, fear of not being able to perform. So no wonder we were not able to produce creativity. So this is widely understood now that we should be mostly in parasympathetic state. And this our study clearly demonstrated that these heartfulness practices of meditation and cleaning, within no time, we switched over, our nervous system switched over. So here was a proof of what happens to the human body, human physiology, when we meditate. And as I was introduced that I am an outsider to this because I belong to the science of medicine, what am I doing in forums related to spirituality and meditation? So this is the first question I am asked. Dr. Sahab, aap bhi? It is something which is left for people who have nothing to do, who have retired, and as was rightly said, that non-scientific people would generally be seen as people doing meditation or into spirituality. But the things are changing very, very rapidly. And by the way, this study was published by the Indian Heart Journal, the official journal of the Cardiology Society of India. And when a study is published, it means it is scientifically rigorous, because we had questions from reviewers. Probably it was sent to some reviewers outside the country because they wanted us to define meditation. Define meditation, define cleaning, they asked. There's something called yogic transmission which you have in Heartfulness. So they asked us to define transmission. So there are these limitations of crossing these boundaries, of stepping into scientific domains, trying to put into words and figures the feelings and practices. So this is not the problem with spirituality. This Gulab Jamun experiment is what is all about. It has to be experienced. It cannot be put into words or put into numbers. And that, unfortunately, is the demand of science. You have to give numbers and show statistical significance, and then it becomes logical, rational, acceptable. So that is a barrier which science has to cross, not spirituality, which has to come up to that level. I'll just add a few things to just tell you that it is not that the time will come. The time is already there when science and spirituality are moving together. And science is exploring spirituality to find answers to its problems. I come from a background of medicine where the science that we deal with is concerned with setting this body right, healing this body. And all of us know, now let me have a raise of hands, how many of you believe that heart has any other role other than pumping blood in the body? Please raise your hands. You believe heart has roles other than pumping blood. Now look at your textbook of your children or the textbooks that you read, or my cardiology textbook, I can share it with you. Even now, it says heart has no role. It's a specialized muscle designed to pump blood, dot, period. Nothing else. But we all know. How many of you have, I should say, fallen in love? Risen in love. Okay, where did it feel? Did love happen here? Or in the kidneys? In the liver? In your beautiful arms? Biceps? No? Where could you relate those feelings to? Somewhere in your chest, right? It was not lungs, we know. Right? So we instinctively know heart has other functions. Heart does other things. But typically biology is stuck at heart being a pumping organ and brain being the boss. So that's why all intellect is worshipped in this era of science, and all heart is left to the artisans or the creative people, non-scientific people. This is not so. We all know instinctively that this is where my life resides. And interestingly, still medical science has not been able to answer this. Your brain may stop, but the definition of death is not there. It is brain dead, but you are not dead. Your kidneys may be entirely gone, you will get a transplant, but you are not dead. Your liver may stop functioning, but you are not dead. Your heart stops functioning, you are dead. So there's something out there in this mere pump which is responsible for this working. Now, we are graduating towards this thinking. So this HRV study, again, there are studies related to Vipassana meditation. TM started all this, and now we have numerous studies with mindfulness meditation. So there are lots and lots of studies happening in the best of the universities. And we also have an ongoing project of studying another systematic breathing pattern that we call the Nadi Shastra. I'll come to that later. So there are studies which show, I'll just share one beautiful example with you. There's another book called The Heart's Code by Dr. Paul Pearsall. He's compiled these numerous studies related to all this thing, and he's come with a theory that heart is not a pumping organ. Now we are all laughing that we all know that. There's nothing great in this. But science doesn't know. Science sabut mangti hai, right? So he's done a compilation of heart transplant patients, 70 odd heart transplant patients, and questioned their family members, caregivers, after they have had a heart transplant. And one or two instances are mind-boggling. You must all go through that. This is all documented, published science, the best of the journals. So one of the persons used to be a Afro-American, used to frequent pubs before his transplant was an alcoholic, his heart gave way, he needed a transplant. After transplant, he was a completely changed person. His wife mentioned that he started listening to classical music secretly, something like Mozart and Beethoven. He'd never heard of those people, and he was listening to those people secretly. He gave up completely on smoking, alcohol. Changed his friends. His friends became typically the elite people, white people. So he changed his social circle also. Now, in scientific rigor, we have confounders. You have to prove that this is not merely because of the shock of surgery or the shock of